Today is May 25th, and at this general meeting, our topic tonight will be disaster psychology. First, a few announcements then. Following up on our meeting from last month when we were talking about the drought and preparation for fire season later this summer, got an email indicating that there is a PG&E is actually having some webinars and what they're calling a virtual safety town hall. Looks like this one is for June 2nd. But if you go to the PG&E, this particular topic meeting is PG&E's wildfire prevention activities, their public safety power shutoff events, and so forth. It'd be interesting to see what they have to say this year about what they're going to do on both of those fronts. They refer people to the pge.com/fire safety webinars page, which I went to, and they have a whole series of upcoming webinars that are according to which county you are in, and it looks like they are announcing dates as the actual meeting links as the dates arrive. So I don't. So this is a June all customers virtual safety town hall, and then the next one that involves our county is July 15. And then it looks like they have recordings of prior webinars. So that's some information for you. Second announcement that I have is that the month of June, next month, is the month where the SLVEN board elections are held. And so this month, we announced the fact that there are elections going to be held next month. And we open for any nominations for the board. Anyone who is a member of SLVEN can be nominated, can be a board member. From the board members elected, then of those members elected, the actual positions for the board, chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer are held, and that the election of those officers takes place next month in June. Well, so with respect to board members, there's hardly any limit. So do keep it in mind and think about the people you know in the community who have been to these meetings and so forth, and we might be able to have some conversations, personal conversations with them between now and next month, and see if there's any additional interest. Yes, Allison?
One thing, I believe that our board meetings can be open to invitation for instance, if someone is interested in seeing what it's like to be a board member, they can come to a board meeting or two. So those who are not on the board, think about that.
Oh yeah, that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks. What seemed interesting would be to talk about aspects of disasters and crisis situations, and touch on disaster psychology for us as volunteers, or even just, of course, as in the context of just citizens being part of something that, some crisis or disaster that happens in our community, that being prepared for that experience, it is said, can make you more resilient to your participation and own personal recovery after that event. So with that in mind, that's how we chose the topic for tonight. And Liz has been very gracious to volunteer to lead us through some of this material.
Let me do something here that might make the situation easier. Okay, it's a little better. I'm a little clearer. Everyone here, I know, maybe with the exception of Jamshid, but I'm not sure, and Lisa, have heard me do the disaster psychology unit in CERT training, because that's what I used to do up here and have done for years. Many of you know that I have a background in sociology and psychology, educationally speaking, and that I have a personal interest in those kinds of skills, which I use all the time. My degree was in sociology, with a kind of a minor in education. So that's where some of my interest comes from. And when I first started working with Ray Solar as his part of his team for teaching CERT, disaster psychology was definitely a better choice for me to teach than for Ray to teach. And those of you who know, yeah, Veryl's smiling, she knows. Anyway, so, and I've continued to do so up until now with the COVID and the changes in the instruction methods, so that I haven't been teaching recently for the last year, but plan to when we get back in the classroom. Anyway, so as I look at y'all, how many of you are certs? Hands up. Okay, I know Lisa is, I know Mikhail is. How many of you are Red Cross, have had Red Cross training? Okay, Jamshid's here. Also, I'm looking at people here who have medical training. Again, with Jo Marie, I know that there's a lot of this stuff that we cover in CERT is also part of annual training through the medical, those of us that work in the medical field. Now I'm going to kind of focus in a little bit more. I'm going to ask you to tell me, or to tell us, will you do this as a group discussion, what you remember about disaster psych or similar trainings that you have had. What do you remember about that?
I remember thinking, even though I've gone through drill training and preparation, when the exercise actually started, I got very nervous very quickly.
Which exercise?
Actually, all three of them. The one at Roaring Camp that Zach head honchoed, the one at Scotts Valley High, and Sergeant Gutzwiller's funeral procession, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, I know why I'm here. I know what to do. I'm going to be a busy morning. Got to pay attention to everything at once. And then you just notice something, and it, I don't know how much detail you want here, but each time I got sort of emotionally slammed when I was not expecting it, because I had prepared, I had thought about this ahead of time. What's my role? how do I need to react in certain situations? What situations are most likely to come up that I would need to prepare for, etc.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to talk about something personal or something educational? Go ahead, Jo Marie.
Well, one thing is every person's reaction is going to be different. It's not going to be a cookie cutter and you're going to get the same response from every person based off of whatever experience that they just went through. You're going to have people who are going to be numb. You're going to have people who are going to be outrageously foul, of various grades there, and all in between that continuum. So, and that's the struggle when you're trying to develop a response, is because everybody responds very differently. And you don't know, it's really hard to provide comforting words or, support a person because you don't know what their triggers are going to be. And so also, it is a very difficult field to support people in.
Thank you.
I remember a simple practical thing that came, I think it came up in one of the trainings, and is that if someone is having a hard time, not the walking wounded, but someone is able-bodied after a massive event, just have somebody having do some activity, whether it's taking names or doing something that they can physically do to get them grounded or focused and safe, keeping an eye on them type of thing at the same time.
What do others remember? Okay.
I can't speak from what my training, I haven't had a lot of disaster psych training, but I have observed a lot, like in various disasters and disaster like incidents that I've been involved with, seeing the spectrum of reactions. I know in my own experience during the Northridge earthquake, I was living with two other people in a roommate situation, and the three of us all reacted in very different ways. And it was really interesting to see that. We had one person who kind of panicked, another person who was kind of with it, but it didn't panic, but he got very hyper for a few days. I was cool as a cucumber during the event, but the next day I was a basket case. It was like a really delayed reaction. So it's like the spectrum there. So yeah, Jo Marie was right. It's very quite varied. I also have a chart of how to react when we get later in the talk here about how to help people, but I want to wait till Liz gets to that part. I can put it up while she talks about it.
I want to comment that you had a delayed reaction that went to the next day. That's really, in some incidences, people have delayed reaction a year later. So for you to that, it was a delayed reaction, but it wasn't that delayed. Depending on the nature of the psychological trauma, it can be incredibly delayed and burst up at unexpected moments, especially when we're talking about children and adolescents who are, having that experience. So,
I have a chart for that too, which
yeah.
about later. I can show it later. So,
Okay. So, anybody else have anything to add here? Was it a hand, Dan, or was it just a yawn?
Well, I don't know if it'd be useful, but I mentioned this to you, to Liz the other night, but when we were camping, I had an odd sensation of being uneasy with how quiet it was. And I finally figured out that what it was that one of the unexpected phenomena of the fire was, without all of the people around, being in the evacuation zone, it was extremely quiet. And I actually somehow started to associate that quietness with, you know, a hazard.
On the
Okay.
opposite of that, I've been thinking of the.
Can you get your volume up a little, Veryl? Sorry.
I don't know. So I can speak up.
Okay.
Is that better? I don't know how to do that. I think I turned it. Sorry. Can you hear me at all? Are you guys okay?
I adjusted too. So
Okay. Oh, just so sound wise, the opposite side of that too is the helicopters, because I heard the helicopters when the sheriff was shot, and then when the fires became they were evacuating people, and so that every time you yell helicopter, you wonder if something else is next is going to happen.
yes, and I know some people recently up in Boulder Creek were commenting about that situation on Facebook. Everybody was abuzz. So
I just met the mother-in-law of the guy that shot everybody. Or anyway, just strange things we bumped into her today. She was talking about her side of that and how crazy that was.
well, many of us are referring to the fire and other recent disasters of some kind. Thank you for sharing that, because it really allows us to focus on this topic, because there are two components to disaster psych as we teach it and as we talk about it. I'm going to address one and then address the other. The first is about self-care and team well-being. Basically taking care of yourself, your family, and your team. And so that's kind of looking inward at those around you. We really emphasize insert the buddy system. So having people on your team that you feel you can talk to, or you find commonality out of a shared experience, even if it's not a positive one, can be very helpful and very supporting. The things that you can do for yourself is be as self-aware as possible, and for instance, say no when you can't do something. You know, if our team gets called out to go into an elementary school to assess damage and fatalities, not likely we would do that, but if we were to do that, and those of you that were parents, are parents, or were otherwise just felt like you didn't want to do this task, in those situations, there's other tasks that you can do that will be helpful. And I, as a team leader and as a CERT instructor, certainly don't want people taking on tasks that are going to result in any kind of injury to you as our team, because you're helping. So my point here is one of the first things to do when it comes to self-care and team well-being is to take care of yourself and be sure that, you know, if you need to reach out to one of your buddies on the team, or you need to reach out to your team leader and say, I can't do this, it's really okay if you do that. We want you to take care of yourself. There are many tasks that will need to be done. We always emphasize, Jo Marie?
Well, I just wanted to flip that a little bit, is if you observe a team member that is getting stuck into have to help, and they're appearing exhausted and things like that, we have to be strong enough to either communicate that with the team lead, the branch leader, or the just the member, the person themselves, and say, how about if I relieve you for 10 minutes so you can go sit down, to kind of break that, because it's anxiety driven. And they think they're going to help, and it's also distracting because then they don't have to think about the consequences of what happened, whatever event we're dealing with. So as part of a team, we need to support each other and intervene as necessary for those type of situations.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. So it's not just about you and how you're feeling, but be aware of the vibe from members of the team. And as you say, if, as for instance, if you got somebody who's really hard-headed and you offer to help them and they're closing you out, you definitely say something to the team leader, because at that point, it's not ratting on them, it's getting them aid they may not be able to see that they need right now. And the team leader can take the hit if there's any flack. So be aware, again, I want to go back to, we talk about taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and taking care of your team. So that should always be something that is operating for you when you're in a situation. Beforehand, it's helpful if you think about what is otherwise helps you be healthy. Give me just a second here. There was a nice cheat sheet here on this. Yeah, the 4 golden rules. Get some physical exercise. This is just talking about your life in general. But if you exercise every day and you get called out, try to do some exercise that day nonetheless to keep yourself balanced, because that's the focus here, is to keep yourself balanced. Drink plenty of clear non-alcoholic drinks. Try to maintain regular sleep patterns. Now, I know that some of us, our sleep patterns are very irregular by the standards of genteel society. Some of us stay up late routinely, some of us don't, but try to keep that going. And even if you're only getting 4 hours sleep instead of 6, still try to maintain some balance that way. Also eat right. One of the conditions that exists at all of the locations is often a lot of junk food, a lot of stuff being delivered that's sandwiches and chips, and just be aware of that, and be aware of what your regular diet is, and try to adjust things in a way that's healthy for you. It may mean that you need to ask for something special or extra, and that's okay. Sometimes it can be provided, sometimes it can't. But if you don't ask, then we can't make sure that you're able to get that done. when I was working at the call center during the fire, they were bringing in bags of stuff that were bags that were prepared for the firefighters to go out to the firefighters. They had more food for one meal than most of us would eat for lunch in a whole week, because there was, you know, they got to keep those guys' calories up and keep them energized and all that. So sometimes it's not all junk food, but just be aware of your own needs and don't be afraid to speak for your own needs. Again, think ahead about what reduces your stress and what you need to bring some balance. And if that's go meditate for 10 minutes, then go do it. If it's just go sit for 10 minutes, then go do it. And your team leader should be building in breaks and other sources of relaxation. I may be too strong a word, but opportunities for you to get away from the situation and relax and find your center again, rather than allowing yourself to get worn out. And again, if we're all on a team together, then we all are part of making this happen for each other. If I forget, come tell me, or speak up in some way. Sometimes team leaders get too tasky and just get focused on the job and not on the conditions. So anyway, so that's what I have to say about self-care and team well-being. There's a whole lot of this is in your CERT manual in the sections on disaster psych, and many of you remember it. I don't know that going over all the details is going to be helpful. But I just want to refresh your memory about taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and taking care of your team. So
I'd also like to jump in briefly, if I may. A
Sure.
lot of that's one thing that a safety officer, a team safety officer in particular, should be doing, watching team members, because it's not just safety as in how are we going to crib this person without cracking somebody's skull. It's is somebody getting stressed out? Is somebody overly exhausted and starting to get foggy? And keeping an eye on behavior as well as body language.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna move on to talk about service to others, because it's sort of like we take care of ourselves, then we also are charged with taking care of others, and those are the people outside of our circle that we so we kind of have to have a persona that we carry with us to pull out to use in those conditions. Find a place where you can be as calm and as clear as possible for yourself when you are working with others. Be sure to introduce yourself. That's one of the things we often forget to do. It doesn't have to be a lengthy vita on every job you ever had, but just letting them know I'm so-and-so, I'm here from CERT, you know, how can I help you? And a whole lot of your service to others is going to be about asking questions and stopping and hearing the answer. Because what someone was saying about everybody having a different reaction, maybe it was Jo Marie, that's the only way you're going to get a clear message about where this person is coming from. But you have to stop and listen and not be so immersed in the energy of the moment that you're not able to. If this is another one of those situations where if you can't do this, then let's go find somebody who can. And just simply saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm with CERT, and it sounds like you need to talk to somebody, and I'm going to help you find someone to talk to who, you know, and again, you'll know who on your team. If you can't do that, you'll know who that person is, because you hopefully know your team members well enough to know who you can turn a frightened, fainting, frenzied, whatever adverb person or adjective person over to, who can who has those skills. After you've introduced yourself, again, be calm, clear, and reassuring. You probably want to slow your speech down. You want to allow them time to absorb, because if you're feeling like you have a tornado inside you that you're holding back and you're trained, imagine how they're feeling internally about this situation. They may be having the same tornado or a variant on that idea going. So that's why you need to be clear. Don't speak rapidly. Give them a chance to respond to your questions. And it doesn't mean that we need to do a mime show or anything, but at least give them a chance to respond. While you're in the process of providing this service to others, be very attentive. In fact, if you see something going on that you feel like you need to intervene in, you may want to give a few seconds to just stand and watch what the situation is. Is it a family having a rapid fire discussion, or are they arguing? From a distance, it may sound the same. Do they need assistance, or do they not need assistance? So don't just jump into a situation assuming that you're there to help if you're not needed or if you're not helpful. So like I said, being aware of what they need, not what you think they need or what they need to do. They need to be part of that decision. Again, a reminder that also when you introduce yourself, that be aware of any cultural clues or things of that nature where, you know, you may not be the best person to step into that situation, but maybe there's somebody that you know that would be helpful in that situation. So don't be afraid to be still for a bit till you get your own center about how you're going to proceed with this. And then be as confident, and depending on the age of the person you're dealing with, you're going to need to modulate what you say. I have a real problem because I love the English language and I love polysyllabic words. And yet there are some places where those are just not appropriate, especially if I'm dealing with someone who is hearing problems, somebody for whom English is not a first language, or, you know, I just need to be sensitive to those kinds of things with the person I'm talking to. So, again, focusing on what they need and get a clear vision of what they need. the next point with this is you listen to them, and then your goal should be to protect them. And that's kind of an odd word, I think, in this instance, but it's what is used by the psychological first aid unit that was put together by the professionals. You're going to be a guide to resources. You're going to look at them, and while they're having maybe really involved in the circumstances and the situation, sometimes the best thing you can do for them is say, can I get you something to drink? Can I help you? Can I help you be more comfortable? Do we want to go sit down? Do we want a quiet space? Be aware of this, of how the circumstances around you might be a barrier for this person, especially if they show signs of any kind of hearing disability or other disabilities where standing for a long time might be a problem. If they're adolescents, again, or children, you want to kind of shape your language to address them, not to talk down to them, but simply to keep your message clear and easy, and to address the fears and concerns that they have. Important at this point to provide them with comfort, with access to resources, empathize where you can, provide them with comfort, but don't promise something that you can't be assured of providing. For instance, if a child says, Mom, tell me my daddy is going to be okay, and that's not something you can promise, then you can say something reassuring, like, we are doing the absolute best to find your daddy, and as soon as your daddy's available, we will take care of him. So, but not to promise, and also to use simple language if you're delivering a message to someone, to a family member, for instance, about the demise of someone. Handle that very carefully, very cautiously. Don't dilly-dally around. Don't be afraid to say, I'm really sorry, but your dad has died. Hopefully you would say this to a parent or an older sibling and not to a 5-year-old. That really should come from within the family. Do we have somebody joining us down here? Or I've got a screen I didn't recognize. All right. So that is going to be a lot of what you're going to, yes, Allison.
Your
Your mute's on.
Yeah, I have a graphic that covers everything that you just said.
Okay.
We're interested in seeing that.
Okay.
It's also on Facebook, or at least the updated version of it is.
Yes. Okay.
It basically, in very succinct sentences here, it would be probably good to have that.
Disaster Psychology with Diane Cohen.
Yeah, from 2 years ago, May.
Well, yes. Well, the thing is that the book, she left me a book, and I've been deriving much of my presentation from that book and the CERT materials. So I think that's really simple, but it's so true, because while people are distracted, these other things are happening, and not dealing with these things with comfort and the like can lead to more stress and exacerbate the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So Yes. Lastly, what you want to do is connect them, help connect them to support systems. You know, if they need to find friends, how can we help you find your friend? How can we help you find your mom? How can we help you connect maybe with a person, you know, maybe they need to connect with their pastor. You've got a cell phone, maybe they don't. You know, is it as simple as, you know, helping them make that connection? Look for ways to help without hanging yourself up. So, and what I mean by that is, there are going to be other people who need your assistance as well. So, learn to balance that. And, you know, if need be, get back to them. I mean, if somebody's okay right now, but then you see them a half an hour later and they don't look okay, you know, feel free to open that conversation again and just check in on them. You don't have to be prying, but you can let them know you're still here to help them if there's anything you can do for them. Any questions at this point? I've been focusing primarily on what I see that we might be doing in an emergency, because that's kind of what brings us all together. Does anybody else have other points they'd like to make around these topics?
Well, I just wanted to kind of I'm seeing a lot more information in the news shows and other print media about people's reactions since COVID has started. And on the Today Show this morning, they had a whole section on what they're calling air rage. You know, as people are beginning to travel, so okay, that, you know, they're excited that they can travel, but there's no tolerance for something not going their way. It's like everybody's always already at the end of their rope, and one little thing has been triggering people to get into fist fights and having, you know, it could be while you're on the airline or even prior to pre-boarding, when you're in the waiting area. That has caused a dramatic increase in the numbers of these events. And it was, you know, quite interesting presentation on the Today Show about it. And it's, you know, so I think this summer, if we are, you know, from now until the end of the year, I think we may see that exacerbated type of response to any sort of disaster and intolerant. If we have, you know, a fire or some event, you know, even power outages, I think we will have people blow gaskets sooner than what we've been seeing. And that's just my feeling. Just because it feels like the pressure cooker out there right now, you know, I've seen it, you know, where people just snap really quickly.
I have a graphic for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's also a something that I'm very interested in, which is the post-disaster psychology, which I just stumbled across on the internet last year, a couple of years ago, and no one has really addressed that. It should be something that's on everybody's mind about what happens after a disaster and the emotional roller coaster that people are on, that they're not really understand. You know, they think they've weathered it and they feel kind of good that they've weathered it, but they're in for points where they will be very depressed, angry, and other things that are delayed in time.
Right.
Liz addressed that at a third call out maybe a year and a half ago. But yeah, that's a very familiar looking graph.
Well,
I'm sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
no, go ahead, Mikhail.
I was wondering, before we move on, I'd like to ask Tammy what I hope will be a quick question if she's up to it. Since Tammy has been in the air a couple of times since the COVID hit the fan, Tammy, what sorts of behavioral changes, if any, have you seen amongst your fellow passengers, amongst the flight attendants, amongst airport staff? Have they adopted to the change as well?
Thanks for the question. Yeah, actually, I actually did just travel, and I went over across the East Coast and back. And I actually have to say that from my experience, I've had a sense that people have adjusted well. Let's just take the obvious issue of masking or no masking, right? Given what some people might or might feel about vaccines or everyone's vaccination status, and recent different information coming out of CDC, which it changes. Frankly, what I see is that I see a lot of people very fluidly transitioning, recognizing without having to, say a word or otherwise, emote in any way, that you're coming into an area where there's a lot of people. And let's say, of course, with respect to mass transit, right? Get on an airplane, you need to have a mask. Or even if you're coming out of a subway and then walking down the street, in the subway you got a mask on, and you're in the street, and if the street's busy, everyone's got masks. And as you get into zones when there are fewer people and less dense, and you're outside, then people may be removing their masks, but people put their masks back on. The mask has become like the little wristlet fashion thing. If it's not on your face or hanging below your chin, it's on your wrist. You see people walking down the street with, so you can just go whoop, put it on. I thought this was very interesting because I went to a pretty big city, and really just I felt comfortable with my behavior and being cognizant, and I saw other people just doing it, and I wonder actually whether we've learned and we understand, and in the desire to move forward and be in a newer normal where things are opening up and we can see people again, and have that connection and love back in our lives of being out in public and with our families and friends, that I still find that there's a great amount of respect for what's going on. So I have to say I'm lucky. I didn't experience any issues or kinds of stress incidents or at all in my recent travels.
I absolutely validate your experience and hope that's the experience that more people have. And the report that was on the Today Show today was talking about numbers from the FAA on, and I don't know, it was, I didn't catch the statistic, but the numbers are up significantly.
Like 3 times, 4 times as higher.
Yes, thank you, Jo Marie. For where they're having, they have to have police. They have to either land early on the way, or they have to have police meet them at the airport where they're landing. I mean, this is assaults on flight attendants, It's happened, both are happening out there. I
Mhm.
think certain evolved people are making the shift that you're talking about, Tammy, and others who may already be, because of their life or their lifestyle, cranked up to the max. It doesn't take much for them to just flip. And so let's hope that everybody gets what they need so they can start to settle down a little bit. But it's sort of like, the incidents we talk about with terrorism and that kind of thing in CERT, where suddenly you're faced with an incident that is best if you can just stay out of it, or if you can. So, but to see 5 or 6 adults having a gang fight in the middle of a airport lobby or at the gate just was pretty weird. So,
Well, the other thing is, because we're coming out of the CZU fires from last year, I've already seen a lot of chatter where people are hypersensitive to helicopters, and I think Beryl already mentioned that. So if they want to know what's going on, where, what is it from, et cetera. And so they kind of have gotten exaggerated responses where they probably were fine last year, a little bit more lackadaisical, and now everybody's hyper vigilant and they don't want to have to go through what they went through last year.
yeah.
I do see a bit of anxiety on several people, trying to get, things done. And, the other thing is the people that are rebuilding and all the barriers they're having to overcome, which they can't get their life resolved. They can't get the stress resolved. So they're constantly having to re-navigate whatever barrier that is up, and they think they have it figured out, and yet no, there's another one. There's one more hurdle, and I think there's only so much tolerance of that, where people just pop. So I think we have to be very astute to that if and when we're out and about in a responding category process.
If I may put my Red Cross hat on and share with you a couple of things that we do. In disasters, we always have what we call mental health workers, which are licensed clinicians, which are available to all responders and everyone who is affected at no charge. And I highly recommend that if you find somebody that is in need, to let them get hold of our people. They are trained just for this purpose. So they know how to speak with somebody who is in a disaster situation and how to calm them down and get them to a safe place. That makes a huge difference, as we saw in both the debris flow evacuations and in fire evacuations. We had a lot of people who just had a really hard time coping with it. Some of the people, they've never left their homes. We had people who told us, I'd rather burn than leave my house. And so they were, we had to talk to them and send professionals to help them so they could cope about, leaving their home or, just doing what they needed to do and then be able to cope with it. And of course, as we go forward this year with our fire season already started, and the CDC lifting all mandates of COVID, we are going to start going into congregate sheltering versus non-congregate sheltering as of sometime, around June 15th. We are kind of switching slowly, and we're getting ready for all of the things that you were talking about, because most people are not really used to having other people around them.
Mhm.
And the tolerance for other things and other people is really have lowered.
Mhm.
So we are looking at that very closely as, okay, how we're going to do congregate sheltering in COVID environment, because the COVID isn't gone away, it's just kind of ebbed a little bit, and keep the peace and keep everybody happy. And on that note, all of you who have been through our sheltering training, start putting your hats back on, because you will be probably hearing from me if something big happens. Unfortunately
Okay.
for you guys, I have your phone numbers.
Well, we can fix that.
And I want to riff off of what Jamshid just said, is when we participate and respond to disasters, we should always plan and take on or participate in critical debriefing incidents, critical incident debriefings. It brings I didn't think I needed it, and I encountered a significant event in the ICU with a baby, and I was the primary nurse, and I thought I was dealing with it, and it was not a good outcome, and I thought it was fine. But the boss called me and said, "You will attend this." And I was surprised, my reaction once I got in and started hearing other people's perspectives of what went down. It brought life to it that I didn't know I had feelings towards, or, and so it really did help bring the team together. There's a better understanding of each other's what you went through. And then also it allows you to vent and just take it off of you from internalizing it. And so I after that, I had to support, I was like a convert, and said, yeah, no, these things really do help. And I thought I was fine, and I was fine, but it helped.
One of the things that we do in Red Cross is
Right.
before we send out anybody, they get an interview, and that is mandatory. And when they come home from a response, it is mandatory that they talk to somebody. They get the 2 calls, and that's personal calls. And we can, extend that to all of our partners. So if you ever work with Red Cross in our shelters or anything like that, you will get the call. And they are professionals who are going to talk to you and assess you. And if they feel that there is something that needs to be addressed, they're not shy about it.
I appreciate that, because that is an important part of what is available to CERT teams as well. Should we find ourselves in a situation where we're dealing with something that's very heavy and life affecting, or if it's just one person. I had a friend years and years and years ago who was being subjected to calls. This was on the NOW box, the National Organization for Women, and she was the chair. So she was taking the phone machine, and this guy was leaving incredibly harassing phone calls. It was during the O.J. Simpson trials, and he was making insulting comments, and it was disturbing to me, but it was not, I heard some of them because anyway, but she had a recurrence of something she thought she had put to bed years ago, and it had to do with the rape. And she never, this person, you never expected to have something rebound like that into her personal psyche. And, she wound up back doing some counseling, doing some repair so she could move forward. So can be very, it may not be, the connections may not be clear initially, but when your psyche comes back with you with something like that, you need to stop and attend to it, because it won't go away. In fact, that's one of the comments that's made by one of the people who was active in the creation of this plan here. If we take no actions to manage traumatic stress reactions, often the symptoms will appear to go away on their own after a few days or weeks. But is the trauma resolved? And what our evidence is the trauma is not resolved often, and it may rebound into the funniest situations. And I want my team to feel like they can at least, we can have a debrief, we can do it ourselves. If that's adequate, if we need professionals, we can call in professionals. But that's one of my foundational beliefs about this is I want my folks, my team to have all the support that it needs in this way. All of you individually are deserving of it, and the whole issue about team is deserving of it. So, and it's amazing, like I say, I have to say for myself, I'm getting really tired of flooding. I'm after 17, I'm pretty much done with flooding, but we still live here. So, but we all have those situations in our life where something triggers something. I am not a violent person. I made decisions about that many years ago. That could have been a course of action I could have taken. But my point is, I decided not to do that. Unfortunately, we don't see anger management modeled very well in society right now, and some people do it well and some people don't. So anyway, I'm rambling on, but my point is that it's important to me that the team gets taken care of and that we take care of each other. Anything more to be added to this? I have some scenarios for us to talk about if you want to go on with that, or we can proceed and close the meeting. I'm going to leave it up to you.
I'm curious what you have for a scenario. I would suggest let's try one. Okay.
I'm game for that. Knowing some of the people here, this should be fun. One scenario I have is I will be the responder, and I'm going to have Tammy be the adult at a house fire. So your house is on fire, and I've showed up in my CERT vest, and you're kind of back amongst the fire trucks, watching them do what they do. And I'm checking in with you to see, Tammy, my name is Liz. I'm with Felton Area CERT. Is there any way I can help you or anything I can do for you right now? This is a very hard situation, but is there anything I can do for you?
Well, I guess I feel overwhelmed.
I'm sure you
not
do.
sure what's going to be the next thing that happens. I need to get in touch with my son. He's in New York. I don't have my phone on me. It's probably being burned right now. So I feel a little unanchored and overwhelmed about that. I mean,
well, here, why don't we, nothing's long distance anymore. So would you like to borrow my phone so you can check in with your son?
yeah, that would be great. I need a minute just to probably see if I can remember his phone number. And I need to get in touch with my husband.
Likewise, you have his number?
I think I do. Things, all your numbers are on your phone. You just have to like push a button. No one has to remember phone numbers anymore. So yeah, I think I should do that.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with my phone, and I'm going to go over the Red Cross is here.
Okay.
And see if they can. Would you like something to drink? Water, soda, Coke?
Well, I don't usually drink Coke, but now seems like a good time to have one. So maybe a little bit.
Okay. I'll go see if I can get you something to drink. Are you warm enough?
I think I'm okay.
Okay.
For now.
Yeah. We'll make those 2 phone calls, and
okay.
I'll go get you something to drink and then check back in.
Thanks.
Now, did you feel like that helped you focus and kind of get on the way to?
Yeah, I think having someone who's able to help come in and do, really, it's a small gesture, really, but to go from like a mental space of overwhelm and confusion to something that's a concrete action is a grounding feeling, because you can have a feeling of I don't know, saying accomplishes makes it a little bit too simple, but I mean, the fundamental act of communicating with your loved ones and your family is, obviously really, really critical, because it helps to allay, this abject fear of kind of the worst case of feeling alone.
And probably when I came back and you got those phone calls done, I'd probably take you over to the Red Cross person so you can talk to them about what's the next steps on getting you a place to sleep for the night, and those kinds of things that will start to get you involved in your recovery,
right?
And get you acting on your own behalf. So that would be probably in a simple situation like that. I know it's a complex situation, but that would be what I would do. And I know that Red Cross would be there. If they weren't, I would contact the captain on scene and ask the captain on scene to get a hold of the Red Cross for me. Or I'd call them myself. I mean, not everybody has this special relationship. When I was doing the call center and I couldn't find out where the hotels were that were being opened up, I said, I know who will know. And I gave Jamshid a call, and I was able to get resources for people because I was able to go in the back door. So that was very helpful. And again, I thank you, Jamshid. All right, well, let's do anybody else watching have a comment on what you just saw, the little scenario with Tammy?
A suggestion. We get into issues of, well, I don't know what they call it in the rest of the world, but the HIPAA principle. And
Yeah.
Tammy may not know your phone system. If you've got an iPhone and she's got an Android, is she going to be able to know how to use your phone in order to do all the different things you need to get through? So perhaps you could have offered to dial for her and get someone on the phone and then hand off the phone, and then you go to the Red Cross for more help so she can have some privacy.
Yeah.
Also, I have this little fantasy about disasters bringing out the best in most people, but I think that's just a fantasy. She could make up with your phone, so just heads up on that. And if you have if you have a nice new Samsung, you might want to low jack it or something, because
Yeah, well, that is a concern. Even it could be inadvertent. She could like just absent-mindedly.
Oh yeah, just stick it in her pocket, and then the Red Cross people come and take her to a hotel, and Liz will never see Tammy or her phone again.
No, well, okay, so I need to have burner phones on me.
I was actually in a situation like that during the rains when we had the TEP center. It closed early, and I came down because I didn't get the message in time that they had closed, and a lone woman was sitting there in her car not knowing what to do. She was at wit's end. Her hotel had run out or something like that, and she didn't know who to contact or what to do. So I sat with her and I said, okay, well, let's figure out a phone number to call. You know, there was a sign up that had the phone number. So I called it for her and put it on speakerphone. And we got the connections for her at that point. So you can always just share your phone and still hold on to it.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent idea. So
I was just thinking in terms of the phone, that if she knew her work, her husband's work, it might be a public phone number. So if she didn't have it memorized because she's got it on the phone, then they might be able to reach him that way.
Depending on the time of day, that would be excellent.
Yeah.
Jo Marie, you had your hand up.
It's always nice to do a follow-up. Like you had started and you said, I'm going to go get you something to drink and I'll come back. And you might want to put a time frame to that, because if you get sidetracked, they may be waiting for you, I'll be back in 10 minutes or stuff like that. So that's number one. And then number two, if you hand them off to an agency and then yet you run into them later, I would just say, how'd it go for you? Because it just shows that you took a personal to heart to what they were telling you. You cared enough to follow up. And I did that at the Fire Resource Center, because we were having to bring in everybody and do all of these stations to be able to get them started. When they were leaving, they were going through the same door, and we were able to follow up and say, how'd it go? You got everything you need? Yeah, and it was very well received, and people tend to say, yeah, that was fabulous, or no, I need to go across the street to the FEMA. Oh, okay, type of thing. So it was actually, I think, helpful to do that activity.
I agree. Anything you can do to make people feel comforted, welcomed, cared about. It doesn't mean you have to get into a tight relationship with them and spend 3 hours on the, just little things will let them know that their community cares about
Right.
them.
Well,
And
and if you hand it off somebody to another agency or person,
Mhm.
closing that loop, if you see them again, just saying, did it go okay for you? It just shows, warmth and caring,
Mhm.
not saying that you don't want to be robotic about it, but it just offers, a little friendly face, type of thing.
Yes. Any other comments on that? Yes, Diana.
I thought Tammy's choice of having gotten out of the house without her phone is probably almost a crisis on its own. Like she said, because we don't have phone numbers anywhere, And I was just thinking, if I could remember one person's phone number and call them, they might be able to give me the other phone numbers that I need, and maybe a piece of paper and a pencil would be a good idea. But just don't have to think of your husband's phone number and your kids and your, if you could just find one person that I know might have a few of my phone numbers, it would
Maybe.
make
Yeah,
me feel.
I'd like to
Maybe
say,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Vicki.
Go ahead, Liz.
Maybe we need to write these things down and stick it in our wallet or some other. Go ahead, Mikhail.
Just echoing what Diana Sue was saying, I had it took a lot of doing, but a couple of years ago, I finally cornered my mother and said, look, you live in the middle of nowhere. You've got mobility issues. I wonder what's going to happen if 2 states away something goes wrong and I can't get a hold of you. I need the numbers of some of your friends and neighbors in case I can't get you directly. And we kind of argued around that for almost a year, but it was because my mother's stubborn. I don't know how she tells it, but I think that's an excellent idea. If you could, just kind of real casual, not make a big idea about it, just say in case of emergency, I noticed you play bridge with these 2 couples. Perhaps I could get their number, and could I get your supervisor's number at work or something like that, and try not to make a big deal about it because they can get offended.
Yes.
But my other follow-up was, don't redundancy is everything. You may have your entire life on your phone, but do you have just a handwritten note of key numbers of friends, coworkers who live in different areas? During the 89 quake, my housemate and landlady's nearest relatives were in Texas, and she couldn't get a hold of her son-in-law in San Jose, but she could get a hold of the folks in Texas. So they were kind enough to call for me, and hi, you don't know me, but my mother rents to your daughter, and I would like.
Well,
there's so many questions of backup and privacy, but what I have done, and I would like to advocate, is just have an ongoing handwritten number in with your go bag of important people in your life and in the lives of the important people of your life. So I'm sorry, I'm getting babbly, so I'll sign off now.
No, it's an excellent point, Mikhail. And it's something that needs to be updated periodically. Also want to remind everybody about the program that Red Cross has. One of the things that we talk about in CERT classes in the first session is about appointing an out-of-state person for contact if something large happens. And in my case, it used to be my mother-in-law, but that we got to find a new person. but you know, having that is important. And then there's also the Red Cross program, which I can't think of at this moment, the name of it, but we have brochures on it about, which lets you and your family choose this program with the Red Cross, which will which will allow you to put information in and allow them to access that information in case something happens and you can't be reached or they can't be reached. So
It's called
anyway,
Safe and Well.
thank you. That's what I was thinking, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So what we train our people to do is upload all of your contacts to your Google account. That way you can access those those contacts from any computer or actually any phone. That makes it easy. So it will be always with you. The redundancy is always good. So, paper is okay. But the thing that you want to really, we always talk about is making sure that the clients are always safe. And, and if they start asking about making phone calls and things like that, we always try to steer them away from all of that. Say, don't worry about it. Let us get you to a safe location, and then we'll work on contacting your family and friends and whatever else that is necessary to be done. So we try to steer them away from immediately going into all of that. In a fire situation where we basically respond to a fire almost twice a week here, and we go to people's houses to help them out, and we try to kind of get away from all of the worries and kind of focus them on the immediate things that they need to think about, which is all of your family out of the fire area. Do you feel safe? Do you have a place to go to right now? How can I help you with your immediate needs? And then once they feel comfortable and away from the disaster, then we start talking to them about, okay, now what are your plans and all of that other stuff that goes along with. And we have kind of, the Red Cross now has kind of changed our policies a little bit. So we used to try to qualify them by the number of people and their needs and stuff like that. Now we don't do that anymore. We just give them a blanket amount of money on a debit card, and they can use that any way they want, need it or not. They get that from us to get themselves going. And then we will work with them on getting their phone and everything else. So that's one of the things that I always tell our clients and our own people is back up everything to somewhere on the net. Because then at that point you can get everything that you need off of it. Especially all of your paperwork. When a fire happens, you really don't have time to go around grabbing, even if you have it already all set in a single box, you still don't have enough time to grab that box and grab your clothes and grab your dog and grab your kid and run out the door. You'll be lucky to be able to grab your kid and run out the door, forget about everything else. So we say, take pictures of everything and upload it to your Google account. I mean, life it's very simple when you have everything there, all your insurance policies, all your pictures, everything. And we tell them, walk around your house and take pictures of everything so you have an inventory of everything that you own, and you can prove to the insurance company that you actually owned it. This is something that most people don't realize, is if something happens in your house, you have a great insurance policy, the insurance company is going to look at you and say, prove it. We're not going to just give you the money because you said so.
from personal experience with the flooding, we came in, we didn't have photos of everything, but what we did is we came in and Dan took photos of everything exactly in the state it was in,
Right.
which meant it looked like somebody turned the house up and shook it. But
But
the thing is, then I could say though, there's that, and on this wall was this thing, and it was what we used as a justification that works in a flood because you still have material
Right.
pieces, whereas in a fire, it all looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, you're
And
taking
it's,
pictures of ashes. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And
so,
so that, yeah, that's a really, really important thing to be ready. Now going back to the psychology, the self-care, that
yes,
is actually part of the self-care. Because if you have all of your own affairs in order, like, most of us
mm-hmm,
last fire were out away from our own homes and serving other people, not knowing if we come back to our home, it would be there.
yeah,
Okay, we got evacuated. So if you were not ready, if you didn't have everything set up, then when you're evacuated and you're trying to do your work, then the only thing you can think about is what happened to my house. Is it my
mm-hmm,
stuff safe? Do I need to go get my paperwork and all of that good stuff. So being ready and having all your ducks in a row makes you a whole lot better responder to the emergencies. And you can then fully concentrate all of your thoughts and your being into serving the people that we're out there to serve.
good point.
Yeah. And
Yes.
yeah,
Got,
so it makes, and knowing that your family and all of your animals and everything are all set up
mm-hmm,
makes life a whole lot easier.
yes. Do we, we're almost at 9 now. I think we won't do another scenario, but we certainly got everything out of that one that we could. Thank you, Tammy, for being impromptu and being realistic. I mean, if this happened to you, that's exactly how you would be.
It's
But,
funny. The other thing that occurred to me was I'm also the kind of person who likes to try to stay organized, and but I often get overwhelmed. I'll start thinking about one thing, and then I'll jump, and it'll lead me to something else, and then another thing, and another thing. It doesn't take very many things before my mental stack is popped, and I cannot remember what it was that I had in my mind, 2 minutes ago. And one of the things actually I like when I go traveling, I actually discovered that I like to carry with me some index cards, like 3x5 index cards and a pen, and just have something on me where I can just write something down at the moment it occurs to me, because then I can, my mind can let it go because I have it on a card, and the card is usually small enough it fits in your purse, fits in my back pocket, or it's not getting crumpled up because it's a little bit stiff. So anyway, that would be something that I would probably would like to have in a kind of an emergency situation. Is basically, I don't know if that's something that can be offered to give to someone who's working through some issues. It's just to give them a paper or a card and a pen for whatever it is that they might choose to use that for.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thanks everyone for your attendance, and thank you very much, Liz, for leading us through that exercise. And have a very good evening, y'all.